within that grid reference is a definition for an emotional value. Then we tie it back. That's how we derive our archetypes.
Yeah, right.
And I want to see, for instance, 50,000 references to something before I consider it to be a serious rising aspect, if you will.
That's still incredible. That's just mind-boggling to me how that works.
It's really nothing. The computers do all of that sort of stuff. It just took us a long time to set up. That's all.
Jeez. Okay, then in that whole sequence of events or potential events, do you get a date, let's say, number one, if and when Bush will, and I'm trying to phrase it in such a way, but will no longer be in office?
No, we don't get that kind of thing. What we get at this point is the vaguest of guesses that the next 6 months are going to be really bad, and that within that really bad context, a whole lot of it's going to be economic, and it's going to get a lot worse than it is now, and that a whole lot of it's going to be geopolitical or political and legal, and it's going to get a lot worse than it is now. Therefore, the likelihood is, and that's where we come into the interpretation.
The 6 months that you said are really going to be bad, is that from now, or is that from the December event? That's
really effectively starts December 14th. If you will, the last week in October is the last of this little emotional building period. So we'll build tension here up to like October 30th. And then we'll have a couple of little jitters, that is to say, little minor release events where something actually happens, right? And everybody's, ooh, something happened today. And they can discuss it, but it's not a big something because they won't be discussing it for 6 or 8 months. But a bunch of these little somethings are going to occur over this plateau period of November with a couple of nice big things in there. And then we hit December, and then it's all downhill from about 14th on.
Jeez. For 6 months?
Yeah, and then we'll have a small building period, and then we start the whole process over, only the scale is much more magnified. The building period is much sharper, the emotional tension is much higher, and the release period is on the order of, say, 20 to 30 times what we're dealing with over these next 6 months.
My God, Cliff.
I know. It's like, you can beat me up for being a messenger with bad news. What we apparently are looking at is energy being put into a waveform such that waveform oscillates the longer in duration that it goes, and that the oscillations get much higher.
But you have no idea what the events, plural now, what the events might be, the December event and then 6 months later.
No. Well, we might get a hint later, part 3 or so within the run here. We might really get a hint as to what we're looking at in December, because we'll be getting some immediacy values that will go to that period of time.
Holy cow. Is it possible that information that you are picking up could be confused or change the mix of another event that you thought you were watching, but the information was really referring to a secondary event?
Sure. Because, like, using George Ure's analogy, we've got all these movies all showing on the same screen, and many of them in different languages. We're not even sure who's talking to who in what film. That certainly could be the case. And I frequently hope that it is.
Yeah, because of some of the stuff that you're saying is enough to scare the you-know-what out of you.
Yeah, my bladder's pretty dry most of the time.
Man alive. I mean, Cliff, if it, and I know you're not kidding, if it affects you as strong as you're saying, how could it affect, let's say, a normal person?
Well, thanks, Guy. That's it. I'm just joking. Well, there's a whole lot of that. I mean, that's why, we're very careful here. That's why this is not free. That's why it's not just generally available. Yeah. Besides the economic aspect of it, costs us a fortune to do this in bandwidth, and we've got to pay for it some way. There's also the other issue is that we're deliberately trying to make this difficult to obtain because, A, we don't want to pollute our source. We've done that before, and it screwed up the model for months.
Okay.
And B, the issue is that, I mean, I don't want to sound melodramatic or whatever, but I think you got to get your brain prepared before you jump into stuff like this, and it would be a disservice to just splash it all out.
Jeez. Do you foresee?
For a second, let's stop on that point there, because I mean, at a personal level, that's very important to me. I remember years ago having a discussion with my step-grandfather, who who lived in this area prior to World War I. And that is the state of Pacific Northwest. And he was up in the Fort Lewis area, I believe. But in any event, he had a brief conversation with me once, and I asked him, well, I'm sorry, World War II. And I asked him, well, what was it like? And he said, I knew it was coming. And I said, yeah. And he said, yeah. He said, I knew 4 or 5 years before it happened it was coming. And I started getting things ready.
4 or 5 years?
Yeah, he could see the winds blowing, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And we had people in 1933 saying, well, there's going to be a horrific war that's going to involve the United States 7 or 8 years from now. And people knew in the 20s, and were writing about it. So
wow,
their minds were prepared to be able to visualize the patterns and pick the patterns up. And I don't want to be responsible for shoving something out there that somebody's not prepared to deal with.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's fair. In the reading of the different bits of information, is it possible that the people, and we've actually talked about this before, and it gets into some of the work that even Bill Tiller, the physicist, is doing, and that is that we can create our own reality. Is it possible that through these images that we are projecting out from the subconscious mind, that we are creating the reality of what is coming upon us in future years?
Well, it's certainly possible. Do I know? No. I have no real knowledge of universe at that level in terms of, I have no sure and certain knowledge. I do have some suspicions that at this point I would like to think that, say we got a particular set of data and we were really convinced that Yelm, Washington was going to get hit by a meteorite and driven 100 feet into the ground, right?
Yeah.
And we're absolutely convinced, and so we run out the 50, 80 miles out to Yelm, and I get a bunch of my friends, and we stand around with signs, and we get everybody in the town to move away. Well, at the time we picked up the data, we get the emotional impact of a meteorite hitting Yelm, and so we think, a meteorite's going to hit Yelm, and it's going to kill everybody that lives there. And this is the emotional impact that we're receiving.
Yeah.
But then we alter the course of things, if you will. I don't know that we would really have altered it, but we go on out and we stand around and we convince everybody in Yelm that we're not nutcases, or at least we may be correct even if we are nutcases, and they go running off and they hide in the hills, and the meteorite comes down and it just smacks an empty town and kills a bunch of chickens. Okay, but in both cases, the emotional value might be the same.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because everybody running around getting all emotionally whipped up about it before the event might have the same level of emotional impact as everybody getting squished by the meteorite in the subsequent emotional after effect. Yeah,
because the energy would be the same.
From our viewpoint, correct.
Yeah, because it's the build-up energy. Okay, but it's not necessary that it could create the future event.
Is the event created?
Yeah.
The response is different.
Let's look at.
I don't happen to be on a personal level of the view that the individuals of the planet, even when their combined energy is amassed, are creating their own immediate environment or their own immediate reality. There are many people that believe that that is the case, and I have certain information in terms of how energy works that believe otherwise. Does this sort of make sense? I think basically there's a whole lot of energy in the universe, and even if you got all the humans together and we all put our minds to jumping in the same direction, we're not going to make the Earth move the other direction. There just ain't enough of it.
Yeah, right. What about the fact, now, you foresaw the Sumatra earthquake and tsunami?
In a way, certainly, yes.
In a way. And yet you said that you saw or picked up nothing on the Pakistani earthquake that just happened.
No, that's not true. We knew that there would be, we didn't pick up anything in the immediate 3 or 4 weeks in advance of that, but we've been seeing the set of circumstances that encompass both New Orleans and the Pakistani situation months earlier. So let me explain that we have two basic categories, if you will, of emotional attachments to words.
Mm-hmm.
The category of immediate impact and the category of duration. I apparently am somewhat better at picking out durational values than I am immediacy values. And therefore, because I understand language apparently better in the longer range, we're able to pick these things up far distant in time, that is to say, many months in advance, and we're not getting them in the immediacy values. I'm sure I blew that explanation.
No, but I understand what you're saying too. Interesting.
Because see, bear in mind, there is no book anywhere that says this word has this emotional value. We're making these numbers up as we go along, saying that we think this word has this level of emotional value relative to this kind of emotion, relative to the other words that mean something similar. And so we're guessing to start on this, and we've been guessing at this since 1997.
Interesting. Very interesting. In a case like that, can you foresee, let's say, some of the major events like the earthquake in wherever it's going to be, California? And
yes.
You can.
We can. We do get a lot of long duration stuff relatively clear, but we're not even sure what year it's going to happen in. And certainly not necessarily given any, usually any geographic references that are meaningful, because bear in mind we might get thousands of them. So what we look for are typical descriptors that would rather, instead of saying Southern California, it might try and describe the desert hills.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In this emotional release, with the number of people around the world today that are on the internet, will that have an effect on the power that is the emotional power that's being released? Will it add to it, or won't it affect it one way or another?
I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer. I suspect that it will certainly increase the immediacy, and maybe even overwhelm people's ability to deal with the immediacy. I think it may certainly magnify emotional impact. I don't know if it'll alter it. And in some ways, in some cases, you have to tell me which is more impacting on a personal level, watching the Katrina disaster happen on TV or reading about it on the internet. A good writer, I would argue, could elicit emotions that television coverage may not.
You betcha. Yeah. Clif, are you aware of Billy Meyer, the Swiss farmer, who has been supposedly in touch with aliens for 60
Maybe vaguely, but the name isn't familiar, no.
Okay, because Billy Meyer has started, he started way back in the 50s, actually.
Oh, okay, you're talking about the guy that's got the really good photos and so on.
Right, of UFOs.
Yeah, sure, yes. I have some knowledge of him, yes.
He has predicted all along of major earthquakes going on, of one huge one that kind of describes the great San Francisco potential quake in the future. He says that